Part 1. She stopped humming in the kitchen. It was the humming that disappeared first. Claire always hummed in the kitchen. When she chopped vegetables. When she unloaded the dishwasher. When she waited for the kettle to boil. A low, airy tune. No real melody. Just the sound of someone comfortable enough to forget they were making noise. And then, one day, it was gone. It took me a while to notice. Not because I wasn't paying attention, but because silence doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in, a little more each day, until you forget what the house used to sound like when it was full of life. I asked her, one night over dinner, "Do you still hum when I'm not home?" She looked up, confused. "What? You used to hum when you cooked." She smiled faintly. "Guess I haven't felt like it." Then she went back to her plate like it meant nothing. But it felt like the first domino falling. I know that sounds dramatic. Most people would say it's just a small thing. A mood. A passing phase. But Claire wasn't the kind of person who changed suddenly. She wore the same perfume for 9 years. Ordered the same takeout on Fridays. Kept our towels folded in thirds, not halves, because it just looked cleaner. So when she stopped humming, I paid attention. I just didn't know where to look. There were other signs, eventually. Her phone started living on silent. She didn't laugh as easily, or at all, some days. And when I kissed her goodnight, she'd kiss back, but it felt like a habit, not a want. One evening, after brushing her teeth, she stood in the doorway of our bedroom, towel wrapped around her like armor, and said, "Have you ever felt like you're inside a life you don't remember choosing?" I sat up. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she said. "Sometimes I think I just ended up here. Without ever deciding." I told her that wasn't true. That we did choose this. Together. But she just nodded. And turned off the light. That night, I dreamed of an empty house. Furniture still in place. Lights still on. But no people. No noise. Just the quiet thrum of something missing. When I woke up, her side of the bed was cold. Part 2, the messages that weren't for me. The silence grew legs after that. It followed us into the mornings, through our half-hearted, "have a good day" exchanges and the shared coffee pot that neither of us bothered to refill. I started watching her more closely. Not in a paranoid way, at least not at first. But the way you watch someone when you're afraid they're about to vanish. Like studying shadows before sunset. One Saturday afternoon, I walked into the bedroom and found her sitting on the floor with a stack of old journals. They weren't mine. They weren't ours. They were hers. She looked up, startled, like I'd caught her doing something she shouldn't. "I haven't read these in years," she said, smiling faintly. But her smile looked thin. Temporary. She closed the top one before I could see anything. I asked, "Why now?" "I don't know," she said. "Just trying to remember who I was." That night, I made dinner. Her favorite, lemon rosemary chicken and roasted potatoes. She ate quietly, thanked me, but barely touched her glass of wine. After dinner, she went for a walk. Said she needed air. It was nearly 10 p.m. I waited on the porch, pretending to read. But really, I watched her silhouette vanish down the block. She didn't take her phone. Didn't say when she'd be back. When she finally came home an hour later, she smelled like smoke. Not cigarettes. A fire, like someone's backyard pit or maybe a candle blown out too late. I asked where she'd gone. She shrugged. Just walked around. 2 days later, I found her phone on the bathroom counter while she was in the shower. I didn't plan to look. But it buzzed. And my name didn't appear. Just, Maya. I knew the name. A friend from college. Someone she used to be close with but hadn't mentioned in years. The message preview was short. "You told him yet?" My stomach tightened. I set the phone down quickly, trying to pretend I hadn't seen it. But my mind kept circling it like vultures over something dead. "You told him yet?" "Told me what?" That night, I brought it up. "Hey, have you talked to Maya lately?" She froze for just a fraction too long. "Yeah." "Why?" "Just, you haven't mentioned her in a long time. She reached out recently. We've been catching up." I nodded. She turned away too quickly. Later that night, while she slept, or pretended to, I stood in the dark hallway, looking at our closed bedroom door. And I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit until then. This wasn't a mood. This wasn't about stress or routine or some slow marital drift. Claire was hiding something. And maybe she had been for a while. Part 3, the night I followed her. By the end of that week, I couldn't sit still. Everything felt like static, low, constant, just under the surface of our lives. She moved through the house like a ghost with a schedule. Present, but elsewhere. The messages to Maya continued. I didn't check her phone again, but I didn't have to. She was careful now. Too careful. No notifications. Always face down. A slight shift in her posture when it vibrated. Like she expected something, or someone. Then came Wednesday. She came home from work, changed into jeans and a sweatshirt, and told me she was going to meet Maya for coffee. My heart pounded. Oh, cool. Where? She hesitated, the smallest crack in her voice. Just that little place on Rosewood. We haven't caught up in forever. I nodded like I believed her. She kissed my cheek. Her lips were cold. 10 minutes after she left, I followed her. Yes, I know how it sounds. But when someone you've built your life with starts living in half-shadows, love turns into a kind of desperation you don't recognize until it's already driving you. I didn't want to catch her doing anything. I just wanted proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I stayed 2 cars behind, lights off when I could. It felt ridiculous, but I kept going. Except she didn't go to Rosewood. She turned left instead of right. Drove toward the outskirts of town. Wound through neighborhoods we never visited. Until she pulled up in front of a 2-story house I didn't recognize. Parked. Turned off the engine. And waited. 5 minutes later, a man walked out the front door. Mid-30s. Shaggy hair. Jeans. Hoodie. He smiled when he saw her. And she smiled back. That smile. The one I hadn't seen in months. The one she used to give me. She got out of the car. And they hugged. Not short. Not polite. Long familiar. They didn't go inside. They just stood on the sidewalk, talking. She laughed once, a real laugh, full and unguarded. And then she reached for his hand. Held it. Not like someone trying to rekindle an old spark. Like someone holding a truth they'd been carrying quietly for too long. I couldn't breathe. I sat there in the dark, watching the woman I married hold hands with a stranger in front of a house I didn't know existed. And the worst part? She looked free. I drove home before she saw me. Didn't speak when she returned 2 hours later. She climbed into bed, back to me, like nothing had happened. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. And for the first time since she stopped humming in the kitchen, I wondered if I'd ever really known her at all. Part 4, the letter in the jacket pocket. The next morning, she kissed me on the forehead like she always did. Routine. Effortless. Cruel, in its way. I watched her walk out the door, purse over one shoulder, travel mug in hand. Like she wasn't unraveling our life thread by thread. I didn't follow her this time. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough. But I also wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Because part of me, a stupid, soft part, still believed she might tell me on her own. That maybe some version of honesty still lived in her. I stayed home from work. I didn't move much. Just walked the house. Touched the walls. Looked at framed photos like they might offer me some kind of explanation. One of us in Maine, windswept and grinning. Another from a wedding, her leaning into me like I was home. Were those moments real? Were they memories or performances? In the coat closet, I found her green jacket. The one she always wore when she didn't want to be noticed. Lightweight. Comfortable. Safe. I picked it up without thinking, just needing to feel something that still smelled like her. And that's when I found it. A folded piece of paper tucked in the inside pocket. No envelope. Just a page torn from a journal. Creased down the center. I opened it with shaking hands. I think about leaving more than I say out loud. Not because I don't love him. But because I don't know how to keep living inside this version of myself that only exists in his presence. With him, I'm calm. I'm safe. I'm grateful. But I'm not me. I thought I could outrun the part of me that wants more. Not more love. Just more truth. There's another version of me somewhere else. And sometimes I think she's waiting for me to come back. I don't know if I can keep being a ghost in my own life. If you find this, I'm sorry. I sat on the floor for a long time. Reading. Rereading. Trying to reconcile the version of Claire in that letter with the woman who made me pancakes 3 weeks ago. And I realized something gutting. She hadn't cheated on me. Not really. Not yet. But she was emotionally already gone. That night, I waited for her to come home. Made dinner again. Set the table. Turned on the porch light. She walked in like always. Kissed my cheek. Hung up her coat. I watched her from across the table. She talked about work. About Maya. About nothing. And when she finally paused to take a sip of wine, I said quietly, I found the note. She froze. Didn't ask which one. Didn't play dumb. Just stared at me, slowly lowering the glass. Her voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean for you to. Part 5, the truth we both already knew. She set the wine glass down slowly, carefully, like it might shatter with one wrong move. I watched her. Waited. She didn't deny it. Didn't ask how much I'd read. Because the answer was already in the silence between us. I knew. And she knew I knew. Her voice came out thin, raw. Was it the one in my coat? I nodded. She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. She just sat back, as if something heavy she'd been carrying had finally dropped to the floor between us. I didn't write it for you, she said. I know. But I knew one day you might find it. That admission hit harder than I expected. You wanted me to. She hesitated. Then, part of me did. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to stay calm. To stay reasonable in a moment that felt anything but. Why, Claire? Why write something like that and keep it hidden in our house? She looked down at her plate, untouched. Because I didn't know how to say it out loud. She took a breath. I love you. I do. But I feel like I've been living inside someone else's life for years. I felt something in me clench. Someone else's? This version of me. The one who smiles at dinner parties and folds towels perfectly and makes polite conversation when she's screaming on the inside. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It was the calm, dangerous kind of truth. The kind that had been building for years in silence. "I never asked you to be someone else," I said. "No," she whispered. "You just loved me more when I was." That shut me up. Because she wasn't wrong. Not exactly. I had loved the easy version of her. The one who hummed in the kitchen. The one who said yes more than no. The one who kept things light. I didn't ask for her to hide parts of herself. But I didn't make space for them either. "So what now?" I asked. My voice was smaller than I wanted it to be. She looked up, eyes glassy but steady. "I don't know." "Are you in love with him?" Pause. "I don't think so. But with him? I don't feel like I'm performing." "And with me?" She looked away. "I feel like I'm disappointing you. All the time." That broke something in me. Not because she was being cruel. But because she was being honest. And I didn't know how to argue with that. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. No yelling. No begging. Just the awful, raw knowledge that the person across from you is slipping away. And they're not even running. They're just letting go. "I'm not leaving tonight," she said finally. "I want to talk. For real. No pretending." I nodded. She reached across the table. And for the first time in months, I didn't pull away. Part 6, Conversations we should have had years ago. We stayed at the table for hours. No wine. No food. Just words, the kind we'd both been too afraid to say out loud. She told me things I wasn't ready to hear. Like how sometimes she'd stare at herself in the mirror and not recognize the woman staring back. How she'd walk through our house and feel like a guest in her own story. How some nights, she'd lie beside me, loving me, but feeling invisible. "I know that sounds cruel," she said. "It sounds honest," I replied. And it did. Too honest, maybe. But for the first time, it felt like she wasn't hiding. Not behind smiles. Not behind silence. Not behind the version of herself she thought I needed her to be. I told her my truth too. How I'd noticed the humming stop. The warmth fading. The way her hand started pulling away before our fingers could meet. How I convinced myself it was just stress. Just time. How I let the routine of our love become a substitute for attention. "I thought things were okay," I said. Her eyes softened. "I thought things were tolerable." That difference landed like a crack in a window, subtle, but irreversible. We talked until the clock read 3:17 a.m. No raised voices. No ultimatums. Just quiet, sobering truth. She admitted to seeing the man again, just a handful of times. Coffee. A walk. A memory that turned into a temptation. But she swore, I never crossed the line. "You did," I said. "Just not physically." She nodded. Didn't argue. The next day, we didn't go to work. We stayed in bed. Not touching, not kissing. Just talking. About how we met. How we fell in love. How we became two people who stopped listening when it mattered most. She said something I'll never forget. "I didn't stop loving you. I just started loving the me that existed outside of us. And I didn't know how to do both." That's when I knew she was still in there, the Claire I'd married. She hadn't left. She'd just gotten quiet. We decided not to make any decisions that week. No separation. No moving out. Just space. And truth. And maybe, a little grace. But that night, just before she turned out the light, she said, "If we keep going, it has to be different." And I said, "It already is." Part 7, The Grace Between Us. We started over. Not with vows or counseling sessions or some dramatic reinvention of our marriage. Just with mornings. Coffee made by whoever woke up first. No phones at the table. A question every day: what's something you felt yesterday that you didn't say out loud? At first, the answers were small. I felt tired during dinner. I felt awkward when we hugged. I felt nervous when you looked at me for too long. But over time, they became real. I felt guilty that I don't miss who we used to be. I felt jealous that someone else saw you when I stopped looking. I felt scared you'd never believe I was still worth loving. We answered honestly. Even when it stung. Especially then. There was no magical moment when things got better. Just the slow realization that love is not built on perfection. It's built on witnessing someone, and choosing to stay, even after the shine wears off. Especially after. One night, she pulled out the journals again. The same ones I'd seen her reading on the floor that first day. "I think I'm ready to let these go," she said. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "They were written by a version of me that needed them. But I don't want to live in those pages anymore." We didn't burn them. Didn't tear them up. We packed them in a box. Taped it shut. Labeled it, before. Later that week, we drove to the coast. Just a weekend. We didn't call it a getaway or a reset. Just a trip. We walked the cliffs. Ate cheap seafood. Shared a motel bed that smelled like ocean salt and detergent. She leaned into me as we watched the sun dip below the water. "Do you ever wish I had just told you everything from the beginning?" she asked. I paused. "No," I said. "Because then we wouldn't have this now." She smiled. That real smile. The one I thought was gone. The man? He never came up again. Because he wasn't the point. He was a symptom, not the cause. What mattered was the part of her I hadn't made room for. The part she'd been afraid to bring into the light. And now? Now she didn't hide. We didn't erase the past. We just stopped carrying it like a shield. One night, weeks later, she walked into the kitchen humming. A low, aimless tune. The same way she used to. She didn't know I heard. But I did. And I smiled. Because some things, once lost, don't come back loudly. They return like forgiveness. Quiet. And steady. Part 8, When Love Stays Quiet. Time didn't heal us. We healed us. Not in some sweeping, cinematic moment of clarity, but in the slow, often silent, returning to one another. We started sleeping with the windows open again. She picked wildflowers from the yard and left them in a glass by the sink. I stopped checking her eyes for lies and started looking for light again. We didn't try to recreate the beginning. We built a middle. One morning, she handed me a new journal. Blank. "Let's fill this one together," she said. So we did. Some pages were lists. Some were questions we asked each other late at night. Some were confessions. Some, apologies. Some were just doodles. It became a place where no versions of us were off limits. Only real ones. She still goes quiet sometimes. And now I don't rush to fix it. I sit beside her. Wait. Because I've learned that silence isn't always distance. Sometimes it's just someone trying to come back to themselves. And when she's ready, she hums. We don't talk much about before. Not because we're ashamed. But because this life we have now. This earned life. It means more. Because we fought for it. And because we chose it again. And again. And again. Even when it got hard. Especially when it got hard. I used to think love was what happened at the beginning. But now I know. Real love begins the moment someone looks you in the eye and says, "I'm still here. Even now." And means it.